Dear you, there was a time you didn't notice it happening. Nothing dramatic announced it. No clear moment where you could say, "This is when I started to feel different." It was quieter than that. Slower, almost polite. One day you just realized that the person you used to be, the one who felt things clearly, wanted things confidently, reacted honestly, felt a little farther away than before. You still recognized yourself in the mirror. You still had the same habits, the same responsibilities, the same routines, but something subtle had shifted. You felt less connected to your reactions, less certain about what you wanted, less sure about what actually mattered to you. And the most confusing part was that you couldn't explain why. You didn't feel broken. You didn't feel dramatic. You just felt distant from yourself. You noticed it in small moments. When someone asked what you wanted and your mind went blank. When you agreed to things automatically without checking how you felt. When you couldn't tell if you were tired, bored, overwhelmed, or just numb. You kept moving through your days, but it felt like you were following instructions rather than making choices. You didn't talk about it much because you didn't have the words. How do you explain that you feel lost without being lost? That you feel disconnected without being unhappy? That something feels off even though nothing is obviously wrong? So you stayed quiet and hoped the feeling would pass on its own. You told yourself you were just in a phase. You told yourself everyone feels like this sometimes. You told yourself not to overthink it. But underneath those reassurances, there was a quiet grief. Not for something you lost suddenly, but for something that faded gradually. You missed feeling certain about who you were. You missed trusting your instincts. You missed feeling like your life was being lived from the inside instead of observed from a distance. What made it heavier was the pressure to keep functioning as usual. People expected the same version of you they'd always known, and you tried to deliver. You smiled. You showed up. You responded appropriately. But inside, you felt like you were improvising your own existence, hoping no one would notice the hesitation behind your choices. If you're reading this and feeling an immediate sense of recognition, it's because this experience isn't rare. Many people quietly drift away from themselves without realizing it's happening. Not because they don't care about their lives, but because caring deeply for too long without space to process can slowly blur the edges of who they are. You didn't lose yourself because you were careless. You lost touch because you were adapting. And adaptation, over time, can cost more than we expect. Losing touch with yourself doesn't happen all at once. It happens through accumulation. Through saying yes when you're unsure. Through prioritizing what's expected over what's felt. Through postponing your own questions because other things feel more urgent. Over time, your inner voice doesn't disappear. It just gets quieter, crowded out by noise, responsibility, and habit. Your past self understands now why this happened. You were trying to keep things stable. You were trying to be reliable. You were trying to avoid disruption. And in doing so, you placed your own uncertainty on hold, telling yourself you'd come back to it later. But latter kept getting delayed. You adjusted to what was needed. You became flexible. You became accommodating. And while those qualities helped you navigate life, they also made it easier to drift away from your own needs. You stopped checking in because you assumed you already knew what you were supposed to do. You trusted routines more than intuition. You relied on logic more than feeling. And slowly, the connection to yourself thinned. This isn't failure. It's survival. You were navigating expectations, some external without a map that prioritized your emotional truth. You learned how to function efficiently, but not how to pause honestly. And when you don't pause, you don't notice the distance growing. Another reason the disconnection felt so unsettling was because it didn't come with relief. Numbness can feel protective at first, but over time it becomes lonely. You start to wonder why joy feels muted, why decisions feel heavier, why even rest doesn't feel refreshing. And without understanding the cause, it's easy to turn that confusion inward and assume something is wrong with you. But your past self sees now that nothing was wrong. You were simply overdue for reconnection. You can't stay present forever without rest. You can't stay engaged forever without reflection. You can't stay aligned forever without adjustment. Periods of disconnection often appear when growth is happening beneath the surface. Old versions of you are no longer fully accurate, but new ones haven't fully formed yet. That in-between space feels uncomfortable because identity doesn't like uncertainty. But it's also where real change begins. You weren't losing yourself. You were shedding outdated parts. You were making room, even if it didn't feel like it. Once you understand this, the fear softens. The question shifts from "what's wrong with me?" to "what am I becoming?" And that shift creates compassion where there was once self-judgment. Now I'm speaking to the you reading this, the you who still feels a little unsure. The you who wonders when clarity will return. The you who wants to feel like yourself again, without forcing it. Take a slow breath. Let it ground you. Let this truth meet you gently. You are allowed to rediscover yourself slowly. There is no deadline for knowing who you are. There is no failure in changing. There is no shame in uncertainty. Reconnection doesn't happen through pressure. It happens through attention, through small moments of honesty, through noticing what feels heavy and what feels light, through letting yourself respond instead of react. You don't need to overhaul your life. You don't need to have a breakthrough. You don't need to suddenly feel confident. You just need to start listening again. What feels draining lately? What feels grounding? What do you avoid because it feels confusing? These questions don't demand immediate answers. They invite awareness, and awareness is the first step back to yourself. Some days, reconnection will feel subtle, like noticing a preference you'd forgotten, like choosing rest without guilt, like saying no when you normally wouldn't, like admitting you don't know and letting that be okay. Other days, it will feel emotional. You might grieve versions of yourself you've outgrown. You might feel anger about how long you ignored your needs. You might feel fear about what comes next. All of that is part of returning. You are not broken for feeling disconnected. You are not behind for needing time. You are not lost beyond recovery. You are in transition. And transitions are uncomfortable by nature. One day, without a dramatic announcement, you will realize you feel more present again. Decisions will feel a little clearer. Reactions will feel more honest. Life will feel less like something you manage and more like something you participate in. That day won't arrive because you forced it. It will arrive because you allowed yourself to come back at your own pace. If you're reading this and feeling understood, it's because this letter isn't just about you. It's about anyone who has ever quietly wondered where they went and whether they can return. And the answer is yes, not to who you were, but to who you are becoming. Take one last breath. Let it remind you that you're still here. You haven't lost yourself. You're finding yourself again, slowly, gently, honestly, sincerely. You.